Hello, my fairy tale things. Austin here, and welcome back. If you're new, we have had a lot of fun looking at the mini Shrek collectibles over the years. I've got a little bit of a Shrek problem here, but I'm a toy guy, and I love to collect toys of the movies and media that I love. And I thought it would be fun today to talk about toys that don't even exist. That's right, we're going to be speculating on what a Dream Shrek toy line would be. And I have written notes here. I have collected toys for years, and I know a lot of kind of industry trends and where things are going in the toy world. So I just thought this type of thing would be interesting. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, and we're going to be talking about our favorite green ogre in plastic. Now, believe it or not, we have not had Shrek action figures in over 15 years. How crazy is that? Now, there have been recent Shrek figures, and I have been buying them and reviewing them on the channel. But almost all of these figures are exclusively non-posable collector's figures, stuff like Funko Pops. When it comes to articulated Shrek action figures, the last gasp of that was a very short wave of figures released in 2007 for Shrek the Third. From Shrek Forever After onward, we basically got nothing. There were some smaller toys, little minis, and by the time we got to the Puss in Boots films, there was literally nothing to buy, which absolutely breaks my heart as a fan of this stuff. However, I think the times are a-changing. 2026 is going to be the year of Shrek. I think that Shrek 5 will have a balls-to-the-wall toy line. You will see everything. Stuff aimed at kids and stuff even aimed at the adult collector's market. Shrek is a billion-dollar franchise, even more so than Puss in Boots. And while I love the Puss in Boots movies, I actually think they're better than the Shrek movies. Shrek has that brand recognition that resonates with toy companies and retailers in a way that the Puss in Boots movies just did not. 2026 is also going to be the 25th anniversary of Shrek. And it always seems like when there are these anniversaries, we get really good toy lines. It's a good excuse to take an old, legacy franchise. God, I can't believe I'm saying Shrek is like a vintage franchise, but it's true. We have old properties like Star Wars or Jurassic Park. It feels like whenever there's an anniversary, they kind of just dig them out of the grave and throw them back in stores. So I thought the best way to format this speculation is, first, I'm going to give what I think is the most reasonable prediction of what Shrek toys we're going to get in the 2026 year. And then after that, I will kind of dream speculate and talk about some of the things that I think would be amazing. And finally, I want to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you'd think a Dream Shrek toy line would be. Today, we're going to be putting our speculation caps on and thinking about what could be. So, realistically speaking, I think Jakks Pacific is going to get the license to Shrek. Now, at first, I thought it was going to be Mattel, because Mattel did the Trolls movie toy line and saw great success with that. That's another Dreamworks movie, so you'd think they'd stick with Shrek and continue that. However, I was looking at the release schedule for 2026 and saw that Toy Story, 5 now we're on, is releasing the same summer as Shrek. So Toy Story will actually be competing against Shrek, and Mattel is the master license for Toy Story. They've been for a long time now, 15 years they've been doing Toy Story figures, so I think that Disney would view a Shrek toy line as a breach of contract, especially because, unlike the Trolls movies, which are kind of aimed at the girls market, I've looked at the toys, they're kind of like dolls more than figures, but Shrek is action figures of characters that Disney kind of owns, Pinocchio, Snow White, the characters they are associated with. So I think they would have a problem with Mattel doing Shrek figures and Toy Story figures. So I think Jax is the most reasonable and also for us the best option. They have done cartoon figures before. They have had huge success with the Sonic figure line. My favorite modern action figure line is the Sonic line. And they've also now seen success with the Simpsons line. And I know that Simpsons is another Disney IP, but that's a lot smaller than Toy Story. I don't think it would be as big of a problem for Disney. I almost think that Disney views Simpsons as kind of a separate thing. Like, it's not even branded with Disney on it. But anyways, I think it's going to be Jax, and I think they're going to have multiple scales. Another thing that just pains me to say, because I am a firm believer in the single-scale toy line. I think as collectors, it's fun to build out the world of a franchise and not have certain characters be restricted to certain scales. But at the same time, I understand that when toys are shipped to retail, they have to have different price points. So you can't just have a whole line of 6-inch $20 high-quality figures because not every kid can afford that. So you have to have more value-priced figures, like this donkey here is actually the Shrek 2 kind of value figure. And then Hasbro already kind of did this, right? They had the bigger figures, and then they had the smaller figures. But I think we'll see this on a bit of a bigger scale. I think the smaller line will be pretty comprehensive. I think we'll actually see more characters in this small line. And it'll be similar to the tiny line they did for the first Shrek movie. And these will kind of look like the Jax-specific Simpsons and Sonic figures, where they're like $4.99. They have very minimal articulation, like maybe 1 or 2 points of articulation. And then they're sold like at checkout lanes, and they're usually in like packaging where they're just kind of stuck to a piece of cardboard. So that's what I think you'll get. And these will come in like gift sets. You may even get a couple of vehicles. I would love to see the Onion carriage finally get a toy. That is one piece of Shrek that I am just absolutely shocked has never had a toy before. They've never made anything of the Onion carriage. So I think that'll be a very comprehensive line. But I won't go into specific characters for that one. Just the general like blanket prediction. You'll pretty much see every Shrek character in that line. Like, they will do everyone. You'll see the Big Bad Wolf, the pigs, all the fairy tale friends, and that'll be kind of like the main kid-focused line. However, I do think there will be a significant collector's presence with a 6-inch line. Kind of like this shelf I have behind me. This is like my own custom set of 6-inch Shrek, where the characters are all to scale. And what I've done is I've put several different lines together. Some of these are from Happy Meals. Some of them are from the movie theaters, like the little Puss in Boots figures they did for the cups. But I think you'll finally see a cohesive and complete 6-inch Shrek line. And these will look like the Jax Simpsons 6-inch figures. Kind of a mix between those and the Marvel Legends stuff by Hasbro. I don't think the detail will be as strong as those original McFarlane Shrek figures all the way back from 2001. I actually think the paint jobs will be much worse on these figures. The price of plastic has raised considerably since 2000, and something that has occurred like industry-wide in toys is the paint apps have been significantly cut back. Look at the Mattel Toy Story and Disney figures. They're all very plain colors. Even Marvel Legends now is doing way more figures with no wash on them. Like, there's no dirt or grime. If you look at those original McFarlane figures for Shrek, they're grimy. Shrek looks really, like, hyper-detailed and dirty. He looks just like the 3D model. And I don't think they'll look like that. I think they'll be very clean-cut. There was a Shrek bendy figure released a couple years ago that was 6 inches tall. I think that's what the Shrek sculpt will look like. He'll be very clean. The tunic will be almost white. But one thing these figures will improve on is the articulation. These will be super articulated. They will have amazing degrees of movement. We've seen articulation just improve across the board on everything. Both kids and collector toys have seen massively improved articulation, and I think this line will benefit greatly from that. All of the Shrek figures we've had are almost statue figures. They just don't move a whole lot, and these ones will move. Now for the fun part, the line itself, and I believe the line is going to be called the Swamp Collection. A lot of these 6-inch lines, ever since Star Wars did the Black Series, they always have a funny name. Like Ghostbusters was the Plasma Collection. I think this one's going to be called the Swamp Collection. I'm putting money on that. And like I said, these will be 6 inches. They may be like a little shorter than that. Some of the human characters may be 4 or 5 inches because Shrek is such a big beefy dude that Shrek usually towers over other characters, so I wouldn't be surprised if Shrek was the only figure that's technically 6 inches, and all the other figures come like 1 inch or half an inch shorter. I'm really not one of those scale hawks that's like 6 inch versus 7 inch. To me, whether it's Marvel Legends or McFarlane DC, it all kind of comprises of the same scale. Anything from like 5 to 7 inch, I just view as a premium collector figure. And that's what these are going to be. These are going to be premium collector figures. They're not going to have action features. Like, if you look at the Hasbro Shrek 2 figures, all of the sculpts were ruined by these gimmicks. Like, Puss in Boots here has a hairball that he shoots out of his mouth. And because of that, the figure is just ruined. Like, his sculpt is built to accommodate this feature. Even Shrek had farting action, so he had to be made of this squishy material so he could fart. You won't see any action features like that. These are just going to be highly articulated figures. At least I hope so. And now for the wave breakdowns. So here's my prediction for the first wave of figures. We're going to get Shrek and Donkey. I know, what a shocker. But they'll be super articulated. Donkey will look really nice with all that articulation. And then we'll get Lord Farquaad, Princess Fiona, and Pinocchio. So I think this first wave of figures is going to be completely exclusive to the first film. You won't get anything from Shrek 2 or even the new Shrek 5 because 2026 is that 25th anniversary of Shrek. And they're really gonna take advantage of that. This would be a great way to just start collectors off with something they're familiar with. If you put a bunch of new characters on the shelf from this 5th movie, they won't sell. So you'll want to keep it safe with classic stuff. As for Fiona, I do believe this will be a figure of her in her ogress form. Finally, I know, we all have wanted a figure of Fiona as an ogress forever. The only one we got was exclusive to France, but it is time for us globally, whether you're living in the United States or Canada or Mexico, to finally have a 6-inch hyper-articulated Fiona figure as an ogress. Maybe they will do the human version as a variant, but I don't believe she would see general release. I think the Ogre Fiona will be the focus because that will be the design used in the 5th movie. And the whole point of this toy line will be to raise awareness of the brand in anticipation of the 5th movie. And these toys will probably come out, if I had to guess, maybe March or April, before the summer season. These are just kind of to get people familiar and started with the Shrek world. You'll notice I picked Pinocchio. That seems like kind of an odd choice. He doesn't really fit with the main 4. You know, Shrek, Fiona, Donkey, and Farquaad. Those are like the 4 main characters of the movie. They're the poster, right? But Pinocchio is a beloved character. He makes his debut in the first film. And I also think he would just make for a good action figure. Sometimes toy companies don't necessarily pick characters that are major. They pick characters that would make good toys. And I just think a figure of Pinocchio would be very colorful. It would pop. Parents would buy it. Collectors would buy it. And we've actually never had an articulated figure of Pinocchio. He was just a pre-posed PVC in the Hasbro line. So it's time for our boy to finally get a proper action figure. So those are the classic wave of figures, and I had a lot of trouble deciding if I wanted there to be a Build-A-Figure or not. Obviously, the simple choice would be Dragon. They could each come a piece of Dragon and you could build her. But at the same time, we've really seen Build-A-Figure become a thing of the past. A lot of companies have dropped it. Marvel Legends is slowly kind of phasing it out. And DC still kind of does it, but some of the most recent waves have not had a Build-A-Figure, so plastic is going up and toy companies are looking to cut costs, and the Build-A-Figure is the first thing that goes. And with Shrek, you have a license that's kind of untested. A Shrek toy line historically has never sold that well. The figures from the first and second movie were not huge sellers, so I think out of cutting costs and also not taking too big of a risk, I think there's going to be no Build-A-Figure. So I will include Dragon, but I think she'll be a deluxe release, and we'll get to that after the basic waves. But if there was a Build-A-Figure, it would obviously be Dragon. Now, the second wave of figures, I think, would be entirely new characters from the fifth movie. This would include Shrek, Donkey, and Fiona in whatever outfits they have for the new film, because you know they're going to put them in new outfits. And then a couple of new characters. Maybe they're Shrek's kids grown up. Like, we know the Ogre babies are going to play some part in the new film, so maybe it's them. We'll just leave that second series open. That'll be the new movie wave. And this will come out right before the release of the movie, but after the trailers, so that nothing is spoiled. Okay, moving on to the third wave, this is where things get fun and the character selection gets more interesting. I think we're going to get Puss in Boots, and I think the Puss in Boots design will be based off of Last Wish, not Shrek 2. That's the design of Puss in Boots that Universal has been using on marketing. I saw that the Universal parks now are using Shrek alongside the Last Wish Puss in Boots. So I don't think there's any trouble with synergy there. If there's too much of an issue, I actually could see Puss in Boots put in his own themed box, like a Puss in Boots themed packaging. And just to demonstrate my point, I have generated some lovely AI artwork for you. I decided to put my notes here through an AI prompt and see what I get. And that's what I got. So there's the Shrek figure, and there's the Puss in Boots figure. Wow, those are cursed. Our AI future is truly terrible. But moving on, I think we will also get Kitty Softpaws, a character that has been long demanded. Anytime I talk about Shrek toys, she's at the top of people's lists for a figure. She only had a couple of figurines that are non-posable, but she's a really popular character. Selma Hayek was the lead of 2 Puss in Boots films, so she's not like a one-off character. She has a presence in Shrek. She even has her own dedicated meet and greet at Universal Studios Florida. So she's definitely a character that Dreamworks is keeping around. And I think she'll come packed with a non-posable figure of Purito, the dog from Last Wish. He was a fan favorite in those movies. And I also know that female action figures are historically a tough sell, which sucks because I love collecting female figures. I made that whole video about how I wanted a Princess Fiona figure and we didn't really get one. I think Fiona would not have any problems selling in the first wave. She has become just such a popular character. But Kitty Softpaws is a little more obscure, and being that she is a female character, those are 2 things going against her that make her a tough sell. So pack her with Purito and you've got a guaranteed sell. As for the rest of the wave, we would have 2 variants of Shrek and Donkey. So this is really important. Shrek and Donkey have to be in every single wave of figures. No question about it. To bring new collectors into the line. When Playmates was doing their World of Springfield Simpsons line, that line was huge and it had every obscure Simpsons character you could ever want, but they had a rule that you always had to have a Homer and a Bart in every wave to get new people on board with collecting. So for these variants, I would do Shrek in his dragon armor from the first film. This is a figure we got back in 2001 with the McFarlane line, and even a figure that was revisited in 2007 with the Shrek the Third toy line. So, historically speaking, it's a popular variant of Shrek. It's very action-oriented, which sells itself well for a toy line. As for the donkey variant, that one's a little trickier. I'm not sure how you sell a different version of Donkey. When Hasbro was doing the Shrek line, they actually did Donkey as a football player. It was really odd. Like, he had a football jersey and he came with one of his donkeys, but it worked, so maybe they could just make something up. Who knows? But moving on to the fourth wave of figures, that is counting that, wave of new characters. So, one wave of the first movie, one wave of new characters, and then this wave I just talked about with the Puss in Boots characters. The fourth wave, I think, would be the final wave of figures. I don't think Shrek could sustain itself long-term as a toy property. It's a comedy, and comedies have never sold well as toys. Like, Toy Story's maybe the one exception, but most, animated movie toy lines get one Christmas season and they're out. So, I think we would get 4 waves of figures, maybe 3 at retail, and that fourth wave, becomes the coveted last wave that always becomes difficult to find but has all the good characters. And for this last wave of figures, I would do Prince Charming from Shrek 2, and he would be in his armor, just like the figure we got back in 2007, because that's more action-oriented. We would get Fiona as a warrior from the 4th Shrek film. This is another action-oriented figure. I think she would sell well and possibly sell better than Fiona in her green dress because it's just more exciting of a release. I have another variant of Shrek. Some of the ideas I have for this variant, you could do Shrek shirtless. For some reason, both McFarlane and Hasbro made this version of Shrek where he's in his undergarments. You could just re-release the Shrek figure again, but with a new facial expression. Maybe make him angry like he's doing the law, his big ogre scream, and then give him a unique accessory like one of the ogre babies, but you just gotta have another variant of Shrek. And then finally, I put the Duloc Knight. This would be a fun troop army builder to have, and would also make for a nice bad guy. Something I think the older Shrek toy lines really made a mistake with is that they made the figures based on comedy. Because Shrek is a comedy, a lot of the figures had farting action and they stunk. Some of them had smells, but toys of comedies just don't sell. Kids like action, and even us collectors like to display our figures in battle poses. So I think having a more action-oriented line would do better. And the Duloc Knight, while generic, would be an interesting army builder. We did get this figure back in 2001, but he was exclusive to the Duloc Wrestling playset, so you couldn't get a whole bunch of these, because who wants to end up with a bunch of playsets? So that would be the basic main figure lineup. We would also have some deluxe figures, and what would be interesting about these is that they would be both for the 6-inch figures, and also my proposed 2 to 3-inch figures for the kids line. So these wouldn't exactly be to scale. So for example, I have Dragon listed. Dragon would not be exactly to scale. She wouldn't be, this big, right? She'd be more of a 12-inch figure. But she would be very posable, and she would display well with both the smaller figures and the larger figures. The other deluxe figure I had was Mongo from Shrek 2. I feel like Gingy would need more of a presence with this line. Gingy is one of those iconic Shrek characters that even people that don't know Shrek know Gingy. He may be one of the most iconic things to come out of Shrek, so you'd have to have something big and Gingy related to sell to new collectors. And a great way to do this is to have Mongo. You could have a big Mongo figure, maybe make him bendable, and then he could include a little Gingy. It would really play into that Shrek 2 nostalgia because a lot of people have such fond memories of that movie that it would just make a fun toy. And finally, I have a section called Fan Channel or Exclusives. So these would be figures you could only buy online or from certain retailers. I don't know if these figures would be exclusive to GameStop or Hot Topic. There's really no saying because Shrek is such an untested license. The few stuff we have gotten have been all over the place, so it just depends what stores would have an interest in Shrek. And some of the exclusive figures. Okay, hear me out on these. Shrek covered in mud. So this is the easy one because we always get this variant, whether it's the pop vinyl or any of the Shrek figures, we always get a muddy Shrek. It's really easy to take a Shrek figure and just throw some brown slop on him. This one is an absolute given. Next up is Death from Puss in Boots. A fan favorite character that would look absolutely awesome in toy form. I don't think a figure like this could be in the general retail line. Retailers kind of have some weird rules when it comes to action figures, and one of them is that they will not stock any action figure that is in any way connected to the Grim Reaper, the Devil, anything from the afterlife. So with Marvel Legends, we've never gotten a figure of Mephisto. And Hasbro has been pretty clear about that he can only be available online as part of a fan thing because stores will not order him. Now that character obviously has a lot more devil imagery going on than Death from Puss in Boots. I mean, this is a kid's movie, but even still, Death is a very scary character. And his name is Death, and he comes with two giant sickles that are supposed to be scythes. He's got those glowing eyes. I actually think stores would not stock this figure. But as an online exclusive, he would definitely sell. He would be very popular, even with non-Shrek collectors. He would just look good with a bunch of, like, Halloween figures on a shelf. Okay, another idea I had was a Duloc Trooper pack. So Hasbro has done these with Stormtroopers and Clone Troopers in their Star Wars line where they take like 4 of the same figure and just put different insignia or slightly different paint jobs on them to make them different troopers and put them in a set. I would love to see a set of Duloc Knights, all with the different knight armor colors from the film. When Shrek is battling them in the wrestling ring, the Duloc Troopers have different insignia on them. The sculpting does not have to be different. I know some of the knights have different body types, but I'm not going to worry about that. Just take the same basic knight figure and repaint him 4 different times in different colors, and I would buy that. And finally, I have what's called a Shrek 2 set. So I said there's a lot of nostalgia for Shrek 2. It's probably the movie that the diehard Shrek fans like the most. It's often considered the best Shrek film. So I would love to see a set of figures based off of that movie. I have 2 ideas. You could do Shrek and Donkey as their handsome selves. That was already done with Hasbro back in the day, but those figures were very rare, so a lot of people didn't get them. You could also do King Harold and Lillian, or you could do the Fairy Godmother. All of these characters are humanoid, and they're not very exciting. I know, we love Fairy Godmother and Lillian and Harold. They're some of the best characters Shrek has to offer. But let's be real, action figures of them would not sell. They are just humans in medieval diplomat robes. They're not very exciting, so you would have to do some sort of set. I think the best case scenario would be Fairy Godmother and King Harold as a set. Those are kind of the 2 key characters from Shrek 2 that we never got as figures. But I could also see Handsome Donkey and Shrek getting a set. Heck, I would love to have all of them. So those are my realistic predictions of what I think a Shrek action figure line would look like. Now we're going to throw some crazy stuff out there, what I think would be the craziest predictions. So my wildest prediction is an entire Dreamworks line of figures. Just take the Swamp collection and throw it out the window and bring in what I dub the Moonchild collection, named for the logo of Dreamworks. And this line would start off with the Shrek 5 figures, but gradually expand to include all of Dreamworks. This would be a long-term line that could be on shelf for years to come, and could encompass licenses like Kung Fu Panda. You could get all of the Furious 5 as figures. How to Train Your Dragon. We could get figures for the live-action version of that movie they're doing, and could even have just wild picks like action figures for The Road to El Dorado and Prince of Egypt. Maybe even have a figure be like Oscar and Lola from Shark Tale, just as kind of like slightly posable figures. Put them in a 2-pack. You could have one set where you just get all of the over-the-hedge animals as little like 3-inch figures packed as one release. This line could go crazy. You could literally make anything. Figures of Sinbad, figures of the Croods, and there would be no limit. You could even do stuff like Father of the Pride, more adult Dreamworks figures. Anything. It would be a line that would celebrate this studio's 30-year output and would encompass every Dreamworks movie ever made. There would be tons of deep cuts as convention exclusives, as online exclusives. It would rival the Palisades Muppets toy line as one of the most comprehensive action figure lines ever made. And we would also get action figures of the bad guys, so I would be down. Okay, another crazy idea I have. This one's gonna sound nuts, but you have to hear me out. Shrek Motu. Yes, Masters of the Universe plus Shrek. So the He-Man line has been doing these crossovers lately with Stranger Things and Ninja Turtles. And wouldn't it be awesome to have Shrek as a He-Man? The He-Man body type is already wide. Like He-Man and Teela, they're bulked up. And all you'd have to do is swap the heads. Shrek and Fiona would look great on He-Man bodies. As a matter of fact, I thought this was such a good idea, I also ran it through my AI generator. And this is what I got. Wow. Looks simply amazing. Look at that Shrek He-Man. This would be an epic crossover line. And it would be fun, most of all. It would be a great way of getting Shrek and sort of solving that problem where Shrek doesn't sell as an action figure line. Because Motu always sells. Masters of the Universe is a top action figure line every year. So you would get crossover appeal. You would have people that would never buy a Shrek or Fiona or Puss in Boots figure buy these. Oh, I got a great idea. Battle Cat as Puss in Boots. Okay, you could do the Battle Cat, paint him orange as Puss in Boots, and then have Shrek and Fiona riding him. This would be so epic. I have to have this line. Shrek Motu. You could even do like a Castle Duloc playset that looks like Castle Grayskull. Hear me out. This is the greatest idea ever. Mattel, you can have it. You won't have to pay any royalties to the channel. We're good. We're cool. Okay. Finally, I was thinking, all of these lines I mentioned are 6-inch lines, and you wouldn't get a lot of playsets or vehicles or accessories. Now, a smaller 3-inch line would get some of that. Like, I think the Onion Carriage would be made. But I was thinking, what would be the best way to get all of Shrek's world? Like, what would be a way for us to get Shrek's house, the Onion Carriage, the far, far away castle, everything? And then it hit me. Shrek Playmobil. Yes. And Playmobil has precedent. They actually have already made Dreamworks Playmobil of a lot of the different Dreamworks movies. So all you'd have to do is renew that contract and drop Shrek right in. It's such a good idea, I AI generated it, yes. And here it is. There's Shrek Playmobil. Simply amazing. But these figures would be charming. They wouldn't have to go for accuracy. And Playmobil, they always do a kick-ass job of building out a world. Like, when Playmobil got the Back to the Future license, they did the DeLorean car, but then they made like all the locations from the movie. And this is like one, it was a trilogy of films from the 80s, but it wasn't a big toy thing. Like, there were no Back to the Future toys. It wasn't a brand that sold toys. But Playmobil went out on a limb and they made a crap ton of stuff. Shrek, they would go nuts with. We could have the Potions Lab, the Poison Apple. Anything and everything would be in this line. Another thing I was thinking of is you'd have a similar line with Imaginext, and there were Imaginext figures for Trolls. So there's also precedent there of an existing Dreamworks license having that type of toy line. These would not be the most posable or detailed figures, but the playsets they would come with would be absolutely amazing. I think they would be fantastic. So that's all I've written down. That was my speculation for a Shrek toy line. Let me know what you think. Was I accurate? Was I full of nonsense? And most importantly, what do you think a Shrek toy line is going to look like? Because it's not if, it's when. 2026 is fast approaching, and it is going to be a wild time for us Shrek fans. There's going to be so much to buy, so much to collect, that I actually think the merchandise will be better than the movie itself. So that's all I got for today. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Again, let me know in the comments what you think a dream Shrek toy line would be, what you'd like to see, and have a happily ever after.